So today I want to talk about the number one thing that people tend to ask about whenever they're getting into radio. Hey guys, I'm Sam from M.A.D and today we're going to be talking about range. So that question people are always asking is, what kind of range can I get out of this? Or what's the range? The annoying but technically true answer is usually, it depends. So today, in this video, I'm going to tell you what it actually depends on. Before we dive in, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and it helps us with engagement. I will go ahead and note that this video is really targeted at new guys and beginners. If you're already an advanced practitioner, this probably isn't going to be the video for you. So if you just bought a few radios and you want to get extra range out of them, they're not getting the range that you were anticipating, or if you're stuck in that analysis paralysis loop where you keep on searching for stuff on the internet before actually just diving in and getting started, this is a video that's going to help you get further along. So getting better range is really a multifaceted thing. It's not just one simple trick. Although at the end of the video, I'll tell you which thing you should really focus on that is the easiest way to increase your range. So before we get too deep, I want to go ahead and frame this. Typically, people that are new to radio are dealing with line of sight communication. So this sometimes begs the question, well, what is line of sight communication? Line of sight signals do not bend to follow the curvature of the Earth, and they do not reflect off the ionosphere. So that means that these signals are basically just available to other devices that are directly within the line of sight. It's kind of self-explanatory. An example when line of sight wouldn't work is if there's a mountain between you and the intended recipient. If you're here, there's a big mountain here, and then the other guy's here. Unfortunately, you don't have line of sight connectivity, and barring some knife edging or other more advanced propagation type of phenomenon, you're not going to be able to talk to each other. Line of sight communications can also be hindered by things like trees, foliage, especially during the summer. In the fall and winter, whenever there's less dense foliage, signals can tend to travel more easily through, say, a forest. In a dense urban environment, concrete and steel and buildings all tend to reflect and generally jumble up signals, so line of sight is pretty difficult in an urban environment. So the most ideal environment for these line of sight communications would really be, let's just say, two planes in the air with no hills, no mountains, no really tall buildings, and no dense foliage to stop your signal. You could essentially travel unimpeded back and forth. With a UHF radio on two aircraft, you could really get hundreds of miles of range. But the fact of the matter is most of us aren't operating from aircraft. Most of us are down here on the Earth. So you might be wondering, how do I know if I'm using line of sight communications, or how do I know if I'm using UHF? If the radios that you're using are just your basic GMRS or FRS or walkie-talkie type of radios, you are most likely using VHF or UHF communications, which are both line of sight. Quick honorable mention to handheld CB radios. These actually operate in the upper HF band, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be talking about line of sight communications. So the number one fix to the problem of terrain or foliage or buildings in a dense urban environment is going to be get to a high place. So whether that means actually taking your handheld radio and getting to the top of a mountain or to the top of a building, or if it means just getting your antenna up if you have a different type of radio system. Either way, one of the easiest ways for you to improve your range is just to get as high as possible. Another thing to consider is where you are relative to the things around you. So if you're right next to a big building, or you're right at the foot of a hill or at the edge of a forest, it could be beneficial to try to get out in the open, away from buildings, away from forests, and maybe more in a valley area where people at the tops of mountains or hills around you could more easily communicate with you. So next, let's talk about power. Power is not the fix for everything. It's really important to understand that higher power doesn't magically fix line of sight. So if you can't see somebody on the other side of a mountain, going up to 50 watts isn't going to make your signal magically punch through the mountain. Now, power might help you punch through thick foliage, so it's important to remember that higher power does have benefits. It's not always the easy fix. Bottom line is that higher power is not going to significantly overcome line of sight barriers. getting to a higher place is almost always going to be your best bet. Now, it is important to note that different types of radio services have different power limitations. For GMRS, the highest power output for a handheld unit is going to be 5 watts, and for your base or mobile stations, it's going to be 50 watts. FRS operates on many of the same frequencies as GMRS, but you're limited to 2 watts as your max power output. And honorable mention to MERS as well, which operates in the VHF band, just lower than GMRS and FRS, is also limited to 2 watts. But again, higher power is not always better. In fact, oftentimes it might be better to use a lower power setting if you don't want your signals to go as far. But that's a whole different topic because today we're talking about maximizing your range. Okay, so at this point you have optimized your location for range, so you're somewhere up high. And we've talked about how power can help, but isn't always the magic fix. So now let's talk about my favorite part, the antenna. And before you hop off to Amazon to go buy the best antenna that you can find, hear me out. In my humble opinion, and from my experience, the best antenna you can buy is a ZBM2 Industries antenna. Derek, the owner of ZBM2 Industries, is an awesome guy and makes all of his stuff here in the USA. He hand tunes every antenna, and if you keep listening, I'll tell you why that's important. So not every antenna is created equal. In fact, most of the time, the antennas that come with your radio, kind of like this one right here, usually junk. These stock antennas are often referred to as rubber ducky or rubber duck antennas, and they're typically around 2 dBi. They're small and moderately durable and super cheap to make, but they are not the best by a long shot. So I'm going to breeze over 2 topics real quick that impact how your antenna works. That's going to be gain and SWR. I usually like to explain gain in terms of light beams. So as you can imagine, a large flood beam flashlight is going to move light around a lot differently than a laser pointer. This is also true for gain with your radio antennas. Really high gain is like a laser beam. It can go a lot further in one direction, but only in that one direction. Anybody to the left and to the right is not going to actually see the laser beam at its final location. But with a floodlight, let's say lower gain, you get a much broader area. So if you want an antenna that is like a flood beam that's able to reach out and talk to people all around you, then you want a typically lower gain antenna. A really high gain antenna can be good for some specific situations, but if you're up really high with your high gain antenna, then there could potentially be a lot of people below you that are not able to get your signal because your gain lobe is a lot narrower. But don't worry about what gain lobes are and all that stuff. You can learn about that later. Just for now, know that you typically want a general all-purpose, good quality antenna that has a moderate gain. And by moderate gain, I mean anywhere from 2 to 3 dBi. The other main factor is SWR, or standing wave ratio. Now, I'm not about to give you a physics lesson. Don't worry. What you can think of for SWR is efficiency. An ideal, really good SWR would be 1, but in reality, that's not achievable. Anything under 2 is going to be considered a good SWR. Higher SWR, less efficient. Lower SWR, better. More efficient. All the antennas I've ever gotten from Derek at ZBM2 Industries have a phenomenal SWR. And you get that kind of difference because he hand tunes the antennas. Oftentimes the rubber ducky antennas that you get that come with your device have pretty bad SWR. And they're oftentimes not tuned to the right frequency anyways. Also, I want to point out that the longer the antenna is, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has more gain. That's a common misconception that I've heard before. So just as a quick recap, the best action items for you is to take your antenna and get it to a higher place and make sure that you have a better antenna. Those are the 2 easiest things for a beginner to do. It's really not rocket science, so I hope that you found this useful. And if you did, please like and subscribe, and we'll keep on pumping out videos just like this one. Thanks for watching. Oh, and if you have questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to dig a little deeper, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you have for me.